personally grow tomatoes to can and make salsa. So I have like 80 plants here. And I grow strictly, I do grow some to eat, to have the big boys or the big girls or celebrities or whatever big tomato you like. I always plant a few of those, but my main idea is I plant Romas, the big Romas, to make salsa and tomato sauce. And that's my big thing. And then the other garden stuff is just normal garden stuff. Beets, I pickle beets and I grow a lot of them and that kind of thing. But yeah, I have fairly good luck, but it's like anything else. You fight the weather, you fight the altitude, and you fight the animals. So, but if you like to garden, I mean, that's part of it. And I've gardened up here against Mount Hermon for 30 years, and I haven't learned my lesson yet. My plants in this size pot, and then once they get big enough to transplant, 3 or 4 leaves, I transplant into these 3 or 4 by 4s. And then once they get bushy like this guy here, then I put them into my bigger pots like you see here, and they'll stay like that. And you can even leave them that way if you want. They'll get a little root bound, but they'll still produce good. And you can actually put them in the ground like that if you want. But I also transplant out of this into the ground too sometimes. And then just stake them and cage them and let them go. Here's what I do. I get it from Macy's 20-20-20, and I like that because it's even. The roots get as much fertilizer as the tops. Sometimes too much nitrogen, you get a lot of top and not root. Then what I do is I put them in a gallon jug. That's how I start my watering out. And if I use, this calls for 1 ounce per gallon, I use a 1/2 ounce per gallon, and I water with it all the time. That way they don't get over fertilized, and they really do good. Now when you get outside, of course you can't do that because you're spread out too much. So then what you've got to do is buy the little containers you put on your hose and water fertilized that way, which works fine, and you can do that like once a week. But they'll do good, and as long as you can beat the weather, the animals, the pets, and the weather's what you fight. And I fight all of that all year long. I mean, I have a lot of deer up here. I have no real good remedy. The things I've bought that's supposed to not have deer eat them, the deer eat them anyway. So it's really tough. What I'm doing now is I'm mixing an ounce or 2 of dish soap, an ounce or 2 of vinegar, and 3 or 4 habanero peppers, and however hot a pepper you can get. Boil that up, put it in a 5-gallon can, take an old sock with a rock in it, soak that in your solution, tie it up to some stakes out around your garden and whatever you don't want the deer to eat, and we'll see if that works. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm hopeful that'll work. In years past, I never planted before the 1st of June because it never could depend on the weather. But the last 10 years, the weather has changed. You have to go by what's happening. Check your forecast a couple weeks ahead. You can find that. And sometimes I'll start getting itchy to put it out in the middle of May. But that depends on what the weather's looking like. And then if you do, by the way I showed you, you can cover them with a bag or something if you're going to get cold weather or hail or something. You'll have to go out and put some. The way I'm doing so many, most people don't plant like I do, so it's a chore for me to do that, but I usually leave them in the greenhouse till about the end of May. Then you're pretty safe. Okay, for monument, this is the way I do things. I put that in the ground, of course. And then I put that down in the ground too. I take it, go like that, and what I've done is cut the bottom out, leave a little flange here to set in the dirt. Work that in like that. Then you take your cage, put your cage in the ground like so. Then you take your lid, and wherever that lid will sit on here, if you have the littler cages, it'll go on top, but sometimes you have to put them down like that. That'll protect them from hail, too much rain, or whatever. When they get too big, well, of course you take them off, and you can always put bags over them also if the weather would turn cold on you. And just let them little suckers come right on up, and great way these protect the plant from the wind. And I find up here, and I'm at 7,000 feet against Mount Hermon, and I find that's the best way to protect my plant, especially when you're starting off. Now once they get out of the box, of course, they're pretty big and growing pretty good, then they can kind of take care of themselves. But this is what I do. Works really well for me. You can alter it however you can come up with a better plan. So this is what I have originally to keep the animals out, that I built the deer are just crazy up here and they won't go in there. So I've used that for my tomatoes and my tomatillas, which I raise a lot of. This year I'm going to use it for beets and underground stuff, simply because I've got some other flower beds over here. We'll show you that. I'm going to go with tomatoes. I've had tomatoes so long in here I need to rotate the ground. Okay, here's my other deal this year. I'm going to do tomatoes out here. I'm going to put some rebar in the ground, slip these down in here, and make me a little shelter so the rain and hail won't get them. And this is normally where I used to have flowers, but I'm going to change this over to my tomatoes and tomatillas. So we'll see how that works. So I start out with a little bit of dirt in here. It can be topsoil, decent stuff. And then here's what else I do. I have a garbage disposal that I've set up, and I run all my stuff through that. I don't use meat, but any produce, eggs, eggshells, any of that kind of stuff, I run this through, and then I put it in my composter, and it composts 100 times faster. And this is stuff I've been composting this spring, and you can see what it looks like. You can't get better compost than that. Anybody wanting to compost, come see me. And what happens is you put it in there, you open this up, and you just spin it. Once a week or something I spin it, and it just makes it keep going, makes it great. You don't have to add anything else except just your garbage from your sink. It saves on your septic system. It saves on all kind of everything. I mean, you're good putting everything back to nature, and that's what I'm all about. And Macy's been here personally, so she can answer questions. So here's a little fun fact for you. Living up here at the base of Mount Hermon, 7,000 feet, I've learned over the years that you plant enough for three things. You plant enough for your animals, you plant enough for the weather, and if you're lucky, you get a third for you. That's my advice for the day.